Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Rafae Iqbal, and in today's show, the first topic that we'll be deliberating upon will be that Pakistan has denounced the fresh curbs by India on Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The statement has also been released by the Foreign Office. If we talk about the topic, of course, India earlier revoked Article 370 and 35A resultantly in that. After that, India declared Jammu and Kashmir People's Freedom League and other political parties as unlawful associations. There was stated and announced by India's Home Minister Amit Shah in a tweet. And of course, India had previously banned the Jammu and Kashmir Liberation Front and extended the ban by 5 years. This was the faction related to Yasin Malik, incarcerated Yasin Malik. And of course, India seeks the death penalty for him. He has already been given life imprisonment. Pakistan's Foreign Office, in response, has denounced these actions by India and said that these moves are done by India just ahead of the general elections are very condemnable, of course. And of course, the Foreign Office spokesperson urged the Indian government to lift these curbs on the Kashmiri political parties and release the political prisoners there, and along with that, implement the United Nations Security Council resolutions. In total, 14 political parties have been outlawed in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and affiliates of these political parties are also being persecuted in India. Moving on to the second topic, we'll be discussing how Pakistan and IMF have extended talks to conclude the standby arrangement review. Of course, we know that the talks between both the parties are underway, between the IMF and Pakistan. The finance minister, the prime minister, both had talked about negotiations with the IMF, and these talks are underway currently. Both the sides agreed to extend the talks overnight yesterday, and Pakistan side briefed IMF about the policies and measures that it is aspiring to take up. Both the sides agreed as well that the data gap should be addressed, and in response to that, the US ambassador met the finance minister and assured support for Pakistan's efforts to meet reform targets and also improve investment climate in the country. To talk about both these topics, we've been joined in the studios by senior analyst Farrukh Pitafi. We've also been joined by geopolitical analyst Faisal. And on Skype, we have been joined by our guest Altaf Hussain Wani, who is the senior leader of the All Parties Hurriyat Conference, and GR BALUCH, who is a former ambassador. Thank you both, and thank you all for your time, actually. I'd like to begin our conversation from Altaf Hussain Wani, considering our first topic that relates to how Pakistan has denounced the fresh curbs by India on political parties of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and Foreign Office of Pakistan has denounced these actions by India. How do you see that these restrictions by India impact the political discourse in India ahead of the general elections? Do the Kashmiris not deserve their representation in Kashmir? And how are these actions of Indian government impacting the emotions and sentiments of the Kashmiri people?
Thank you for having me on this show. And recently the Indian Prime Minister visited occupied Kashmir, and we saw how people were brought and the government employees were brought to the gathering, and the government of India and the Prime Minister of India announced certain schemes and all that in the region. Having seen that the people of Kashmir by and large have shown a cold shoulder to the Prime Minister of India, putting him as a colonizer, as a murderer of democracy and the self-determination of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. So people at large did not participate in his so-called political rally in Jammu and Kashmir. And we know also it's long history of Indians, not the new one of RSS or BJP, since 1947 when they occupied Kashmir, and after that they tried to install such people in Kashmir so that they could show that the integration of Kashmiris with India through some developments, through other schemes and all that, what Modi also did. But in past also, in Pitafi regime, they did a lot of things, but they never were able to have the emotional bondage of Kashmiris with that of India. That is still there. The people of Kashmir have emotionally attached themselves to the Pakistan. They have emotionally attached themselves to the right of self-determination. They emotionally feel they have been colonized. They have been subjected to brutal occupation by India. So what Indian government, current government is doing time and again, they have now started looking at that there will be a resistance in Kashmir, there is a political resistance in Kashmir, after application of Article 370, and after that, knowing that there will be resentment on that, all the political leadership was taken behind the bars, and uh, anti-terrorist laws were invoked against them, and they are put in they are under trial in the Delhi Tihar jail, and then again they declared Jamaat Islami and Jammu Kashmir Liberation Front and outlawed, and then as the Indian Prime Minister, as they saw the ground situation in Kashmir, that's not favorable to them. Having installed the so-called new leadership in Kashmir, installing the BJP people in Kashmir, trying to create leadership, but they failed in last 5 years to do so. Now, they, what they did, they declared other factions like Shabir Shah's Democratic Political Freedom Party, and then named Congress Jammu Kashmir National Front, and then this Jammu Kashmir Freedom League and People's League as outlawed. And what they want to convey to the people of Kashmir is basically the all leadership is in prisons, but now they want to convey to the people of Kashmir at large, the activists of Kashmir, that all the people will face the all charges against under the UAPA. Our human rights defender like Khurram Parvez, who has been in the prison for the last 2 3 years under UAPA, the United Nations Special Rapporteur, even the High Commissioner, and all the special procedures, issues many communications to government of India, and there was a huge hue and cry around the globe on his detention. But we saw the government of India has shown no respect to that. That creates a fear in the youth, in other people, that what government of India tries to create, that fear that we don't listen to anybody. We are the ones, Modi is the one who can do anything. And that's why, in order to win the elections in India, they say Kashmir is now in our pocket, we have done everything. Having said that, you see, the Indian Election Commissioner, even the Supreme Court of India, which ironically did in its decision said that revocation of Article 370 was under the Indian Constitution, but ordered the state government, the Indian-occupied state government, to hold the elections in Kashmir. But they are not ready to hold the elections in Kashmir even at this time, when they are going to hold the elections for the Parliament of India. Having done the gerrymandering on the ground, having done so much, putting the communities against each other, banning the political parties, BJP knows that the people of Kashmir could not vote for her, and they had to face music in Kashmir. That's why one of the tactics, military repression on one hand, using NIA, SIA on the other hand, banning the political parties on the other hand, and using torture as a state's tool to suppress the people's resistance in Kashmir, are the means which the government of India is using at presently in order to have that cherished goal that they want to install Hindu chief minister in Kashmir. They have almost changed the demography in Kashmir, and also they want to integrate emotionally the Kashmir into the Indian Union, which till they have failed, and they are resorting to such tactics.
Rafi, I understand that you will now go to the ambassador, but let me, before you go there, let me request our good friend Altaf Saab to actually adjust his mic. There seems to be some background noise that seems to be overwhelming his voice. So if he is not using, sir, if you are not using a mic, please do so. Otherwise, if you have the mic, kindly adjust it. Go ahead.
Right. Ambassador BALUCH, as Mr. Wani mentioned, that what kind of a message Indian government is trying to give to the Kashmiris. First, they revoked the Article 370 and 35A. Now, they are silencing dissent in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Of course, they're banning the political parties. They're terming them as outlawed. Do you think this is just a message to the Kashmiri people, or they're giving a message to the world against India not tolerating any form of dissent in Kashmir and overall in their country.
And Ambassador Sahab, could you also elaborate what might be the purpose of all these curbs? What does Indian state actually want to get out of it?
Yeah, see, we have to, I'll go beyond the international uh, laws and agreements and which and other violations that Wani Saab also mentioned and we see in the write-ups. I think what is happening now in Kashmir, in the illegally Indian-occupied Kashmir, is essentially the continuation of the BJP government to ensure a heavy, to engineer a heavy mandate for Mr. Modi and make him larger than life leader for India. Essentially, they are trying to overmatch the iconic Indian iconic leaders like Mr. Gandhi or Mr. Nehru. And I think they are going out of their way. And I think Kashmir is kind of a victim of that strategy, BJP, of creating that notion, at least at this stage, of Hindu states. And they are using all instruments available at their disposal. And I think the curb on the political parties is essentially, in my view, is aimed at ensuring that there's no dissent in Kashmir, that they somehow or the other bring in people, apparently give a landslide victory to BJP. And I think it fits in my perspective, in that bigger picture, that strategy of BJP of overwhelming each and every political uh, force, local or national, in India before these elections take place. So they want to overwhelm everybody in essentially all the opponents. But I think in the course of events, the Kashmiri people obviously are victims. And obviously it is a very, very clear message to the people of Kashmir that they apparently are left with no option but to toe the line which is told by Delhi. And of course, it's a message to us, the Pakistani nation, Pakistani state, who have been all along with the Kashmiri people and would remain so, that India probably has gone beyond a return to any normal negotiations, going back to the UN resolutions, or even respecting the basic norms of human rights and political freedoms in Kashmir. Kashmir is not even treated as an equal state or equal people in India. The freedom that the Indian people in other states have, it to have their local political entities, to use them as a political platforms. Even the Kashmir people are being deprived of that. So I think it's a question of human rights. It's a question of fundamental rights. It's a question of fundamental right of freedom of expression and freedom of choice and freedom of political activity. So I think we should build a case on these lines and present to the relevant international forums that India is a so-called democracy which has been in violation of so many international treaties and agreements under which freedoms are ensured to the citizens of that country. Yeah.
Rightly pointed out, Ambassador Baloch, while I was going through, while you were speaking, of course, I was figuring out that there were a few names previously. Of course, they used to be part of the puppet governments. I would name them, of course, Farrukh Abdullah and Mehbooba Mufti. We always used to see them being part of the puppet governments, and they always used to listen to New Delhi. So do you think now even that space won't be given to Kashmiris? We know that though these two personalities, they were against Article 370, abrogation of 370 and 35A, but at the same time, they were always aligned with the mainstream political parties of India, and of course, over their own people, they were, being part of that unholy alliance that was actually bringing sort of, havoc over the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So now even we won't be able to see them in the power, sir?
I think at the micro level, yes, we might even not see them. But given the history of Kashmir, unfortunately, and some of the leaders, I will not be shocked. May not be surprised that you find some of those. I won't go into the names, but some of the people who might be tempted to go for it. But what I am touching at is yet another major issue at the conceptual level. What India essentially is doing, what is their target, is the wujud, the identity of Kashmiris as Kashmiris. As we know, Kashmir is a living civilization for millennia. Now, what India is doing all of that without saying and using all these instruments is to devour at the very concept of Kashmiriyat, the very identity to which Kashmiris are striving, and we are trying to help in Pakistan. Obviously, that is their choice to join Pakistan or not. That will be different. But what I look at it is that Kashmiri people, their civilization, their language, their culture, obviously, which is completely embedded with the Islamic spirit and their affinity with Pakistan when it comes to the choice. But I think at the conceptual level, my hunch is and my assessment is that Indian ideologues, the Hindu nationalists, they do not want any identity within the Confederation or Federation of India which asserts its own separate identity. Tashakhus hi nahi mante. They don't even accept that. I'll not be surprised. There might be curbs on even on Kashmiri language, on Kashmiri culture. So it is an onslaught on anything other than India, Hindu in India and its vicinity. So I think they see any assertive people, whatever small number they are, but they see it as an ideological challenge to the very Hindutva ideology that they want to impose on the entire population of India and even beyond. So I see this as an ideological struggle and their effort. Obviously, the tools can be different. It could be constitutional, legal elections, local elections, withdrawal of 370 and imposing a emergency, putting people in the back. But that we know history is a witness that you cannot with dint of force change the identity, snatch the identity in which people have been living for thousands of years. Identity is one thing which is given into the spirit of the people from generation to generation, as we see today in Palestine, for example. Right. What Israel is doing essentially is doing the same thing. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Right. Let me go to Wani Saab. Wani Saab, can we now assume that in the run-up to the elections in Kashmir, whenever they take place, the human rights violations are going to increase in coming days?
You see, the human rights violations are already on the rise in Kashmir. Unfortunately, what is happening currently is we don't get the coverage in the Indian media or that of the media of Jammu and Kashmir, which originally from where we could get the news and all those things. Now the rights violations are in a different way. We saw the ones there was mass crackdowns and all that, and then there were custodial killings as well as indiscriminate firings on the processions and all that. People were killed. But now there's a different type of regime, human rights regime violations which have been put in by the India. You see, off and on, you go to the news, you see that in the NIA, the SIA is raiding each and every house in Kashmir. What for? Are all the Kashmiris associated with some this type of, have they got the money from terrorist organization or that? No, this is to terrorize them. This is to make them to man them that they should not resist the Indian authority. Likewise, you see, none of the opinion makers in Kashmir who used to write opinions in different newspapers, they are not writing now. They are missing because they don't want to write. If they write their heart out, they will face the music of that. This is the another kind of human rights violation. I tell you, we have talked it before also. I could talk to my 90 years father off and on before the abrogation of Article 370 and for not for the 90 days. And then again, I tried to call him. But now, nobody is picking my phone at my home because they have been terrorized. They have been asked by the government of India not to, by the NIA, by the Jammu Kashmir police and other investigative agencies, not to pick up my phone, not to talk to me. It's not only me, all the people all the people, all the who raise their voice for the human rights violations of Kashmir or for the rights salvation of people of Kashmir who are living outside the Kashmir, their families are facing the same kind of repression in Kashmir. So land confiscation is another, the land grab is at rise, the annexation of properties and all that. So this is another degree of human rights violations which is being continued by the Indian government, and in coming days you will see as the elections are coming nearer, we have seen that there will be a false flag operation, there can be an incursion into Azad Jammu and Kashmir, there can be some sort of incident which Indians will plan in the mainland India in order to show that BJP is must, Modi is must, so the people of India will have to vote for Modi. This
Yeah.
is what I could see in future.
Yeah, Wani Saab, our hearts go out to you when obviously, you highlight your plight that, of course, you are not even able to talk to your father who's still in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Here, I just wanted to raise a very important point, and that is, when we talk about India doing all of these steps, taking all of these illegal steps in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, including abrogation of 370, 35A, all of these steps, and imposing UAPA in the valley as well, these all steps are actually against the resolution 47 of United Nations itself. And can we say that today's mightiest powers, the champions, or I should say the ones who claim to be champions of human rights, claim to be champions of democracy and the rights of humans throughout the world, they are accomplice in the sin which is being committed by the India itself, because their silence, shouldn't it be considered as criminal silence over whatever the India is doing in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir?
Yes, you see, if you will see the international response on these things, it's a criminal silence on behalf of the big powers, on behalf of the so-called West and the United States, who ought to claim themselves the champions of human rights. But we have seen most recently what happened in Gaza and what is the response of the international community. We could see that. On the human rights front, I could see, I am here in Geneva, I could see the lots of human rights organizations, even each and every human rights organization here in Geneva, and the special reporters. Even today, when I joined you, before that I was in a side event where the UN Special Rapporteur on Peaceful Assembly and some of the international human rights advocates, they talked at length about the India, how the Modi government has jokered the spaces of civil society. They talked about how the Jammu Kashmir has been turned into hell. This is the people at length talk about it. But when it comes to the political governments, we see their response, unfortunately, that's criminal silence, not only for Kashmir, but this criminal silence we see in the Palestine, in other places of conflict, where they have their own, by what I say, their own strategic interests, their own political interests, their own economic interests. They keep silence for that, and they use human rights as a pretext to criminalize those who are weak.
Right.
Right.
In a way, Rafe, India has been very lucky that every time we try to draw attention to Kashmir, some other country somewhere else actually starts some other humongous violation of human rights, and somehow Kashmir is relegated to background. But I had a question for Ambassador Saab, with your permission, Rafe. Ambassador Saab, I'm glad that you were talking about the Indian intent to efface the identity of Kashmiris. Recently, Indian Supreme Court actually heard the case on Article 370 and 35A, in which there was an undertaking given by the Indian government, the Attorney General, that they are going to restore statehood in Kashmir, and they are going to hold elections as well by September, I assume. What do you make of those promises or those undertakings?
Yeah, I think there is a pretension of a judiciary, which allowed the desecration of Babri Mosque, which allowed the construction of a temple on a mosque. So I really would take any of their pronouncements, how moral they may sound, with a pinch of salt. So I believe that was just to put a little bit balm on the wounds of the wounded people of Indian-held Kashmir. So I don't think that will happen. But if at all it happens, probably they would have engineered the entire political tapestry of Kashmir in a way that all those elements which somehow or the other ask for their basic rights, basic freedoms, as enshrined, and their right to decide where they want to go, as enshrined in the UN resolutions. So if at all some elements emerge, will be those who compromise on this very fundamental, foundational principle on which the Kashmiri dispute exists today. And
right. Ambassador Saab, sorry to cut you, but by your answer, I'm assuming you are referring to Article 35A and then domicile law, and through that, the kind of demographic changes they want to bring in the valley.
Indeed.
Right?
Indeed. That's what I mean to say, that they would have changed the demography, the political tapestry of Kashmir to that extent. They will damage it so much that the real Kashmiris might be turned into a minority. And again, it's a violation of the basic rights that no other power has the authority to change or bring in a demographic change. In fact, it could be termed as a form of ethnic cleansing by way of like pushing them out of the majority. So why not a law could be kind of invoked where we say this is an ethnic cleansing with other instrument. In fact, there has been we know that how many Kashmiris, lakhs of them, youth, have been killed in the past 30, 40, 50 years of their struggle. So I think what we are seeing is a slow war. It's a kinetic war against the Kashmiris, but it is in a way very sophisticated through other instruments, which are suppression of political activities, violation of human rights, taking away their constitutional rights and their special status. So I think it's a combination of kinetic power, as also Wani Saab said, that there is a knock on every door in Kashmir to strengthen them. In fact, to kind of to make them fair and force them to submission to the BJP government. And I think their will to resist, that is their target. That as long as the Kashmiris have the will to resist, they'll keep resisting. But that is what exactly is the target of the Indian government, by way of taking out their political options, their political platforms, their the political organizations, newspapers, media, journalists. So I think there is a whole lot of they have a whole big game going on to somehow usurp and completely uh, depersonate Kashmir as a Kashmir. It will be just part of India in a way. Yep, as they say.
Ambassador Baloch, as you have, you are a seasoned diplomat, and of course, we always learn a lot from you. Earlier, Wani Saab highlighted an excellent, point, and that was related to, of course, whatever is taking place in India is quite similar to whatever is happening in Palestine as well. Do you think that obviously, I always consider India to be, one side of the same coin. On the other side, of course, it's Israel. So both of them, they are two sides of the same coin. Whatever is happening in India, don't you think that it's the entire model of Israel that is being followed by India? Whatever Israel is doing in Palestine, of course, same kind of curbs on political parties there we saw initially, and of course, stepwise they came to a point where simply they are, turning out to be an authoritative on Palestinians and on Gaza. Same is the case with Kashmir. Slowly, India is heading towards where once we saw Israel was against Palestine.
See, now I'm not talking as a Pakistani or on the PTV only. I'm just talking as a historian. There's so much of similarity, identity, and affinity between the Zionist movement, which is now in power in Israel, and the Hindutva BJP RSS nexus. They actually have taken out the same playbook written by the Nazis. It is the same playbook of completely evaporating and completely eliminating the Palestinians, throw them out of their lands, dispossess them of their identity. So exactly the same thing is happening. So literally speaking, if we look at it, that's why we're talking about Kashmir, suddenly this very negative force in Palestine comes to a state. Not that the two identities are Muslims, not that. Let's keep that apart. Let's treat them as human beings. But their fault is that they are Muslims. Let's not now hide behind any pretension. If Kashmiris were not having this burden of being there, being supported by the Muslim Ummah and being asserting their Muslim identity as Kashmiris, and same way Palestinians, the situation would be different in the world. The support will be different for sure. So I think let's now, time has come where we all historians, all analysts, all writers have to say spade is a spade. If there is this polarization, if this is clash of civilization, a form of a clash of civilization, let's say it. Let's say it, not hide behind pretensions, words, and slangs. So I think both the people, that is people of Kashmir and people of Palestine, are suffering. They are Muslims, they have their own Muslim identities, they have their local identities, and both are victims of the imperial forces of the world who want to control every and each community, country, nationality which wants to assert their identity. So it is the brute force which is being used against the Kashmiris. It is the brute force which is being used against the Palestinians. There's the time.
Yeah. Very true and very rightly put, Ambassador Baloch. Altaf, Wani, what are your views as Ambassador Baloch mentioned that India is not recognizing the identity of the Kashmiri people? It claims to be a secular democracy, but at the same time, it has no patience or no tolerance for dissent. And of course, we have seen time and time again they have resorted to oppressive tactics in the occupied valley instead of giving the Kashmiris their legitimate right to their political representation. Do we see these oppressive actions have brought forth nothing for the Indian regime? Do you think they should indulge in dialogue and recognize the political leadership if they want to settle this dispute politically, because they just have blood on their hands and they're not moving towards anything? and they're just pressurizing and making the Kashmiris subject to more oppressive tactics.
And in this context, Wani Saab, especially because Ambassador Saab also brought up the issue of ethnic cleansing, Pakistan has been actually releasing and compiling and releasing dossiers on these human rights violations, including chemical use of chemical weapons. Why is it that those dossiers, that evidence, hasn't been able to move any government in the West or in democracies?
You see, first of all, let me tell you that India from the very beginning have seen Kashmir through an ideological lens, which we missed for a long time. We thought that Congress is a secular party, so they will one day or the other day they will do this and that. But Congress was also looking at Kashmir through ideological lens, that of Hinduta lens, that Kashmir is a land of Hinduism. That is their main thought and main project was their project. And now the BJP has openly called it for that it is a Hindu land. We are going to Hindunize it. We are going to do this, and we are going to erase the Muslim identity of Kashmiris. That they are using different tactics for that. So there is nothing to hide that they are not doing that in Kashmir. Ethnic cleansing of Kashmiris through different means. We have discussed it time and again. And the second thing, what Pitafi have said that about the dossiers which we have been sending to the different people and different governments and all that. Pitafi said, you know that what we say, what we send, that's one thing. What we people look through their eyes, through media, through each and everything in Gaza, has that made any impact to these Western democracies? We have seen crowds of people coming out in support of Palestinians in the West, in the United States and everywhere to support them. But their governments are on the other side of the fence. They are with the oppressor.
Not the fence. Say truth. Say truth, sir. They are on the other side of the truth.
Right, absolutely, Wani sir, but here's the thing. We have recently seen that in the US, because so many people have come out in support of Palestinians, there have been laws which are being made. Senator Von Hollen recently made a kind of law, and because of that, they are going to perhaps stop the weapon supply to Israel. So it works when it comes to public pressure. Why is it that we haven't been able to create the similar kind of moment where there will be pressure on Western governments?
See, when it comes to Palestinian issue, there are lots of other elements. In Kashmir, we don't have those elements associated to that. It's Kashmiris and Pakistanis to raise this issue and all that. When it comes to Palestinian issue, to us, it is an Islamic issue, it's a Muslim issue. But at the same time, in Palestine, there's lots of population of Christians. Basically, the battle in Palestine was between Christians and these Jews. Now it has transformed into the battle with the Muslims and all that. So a lot of Christian population around the globe has been supporting the Palestinian cause. They have been raising their voice for the Palestinian cause. But when it comes to Kashmir, unfortunately, it has been dubbed as by the Indian false propaganda, as you know, about the disinfo lab and all that, what India has been doing for last so many years, creating this of environment in the globe, that this is a radical movement, this is an Islamic movement, this is sponsored by Pakistan and all that, and tagging it to the terrorism and all that. That has, and some people started believing in it. And unfortunately, at that point of time, the counter narrative to these false accusations was missing. That at that time we did talk about it, but the counter narrative which should have been was missing. But now the people around the globe have been there is a lot much of awareness. I was telling you, just in the other room where I was sitting, the people were talking more about Kashmir because the title was India at the brink. There was no Kashmiri speaking. Those were the Westerns, those were the other people from around the globe who were speaking for the people of Kashmir, who were speaking for the liberties and rights of the people of Kashmir. So the awareness is there. It has been created. There are the pressures to keep in that we need to do more for that.
Right, of course, it's time to call a spade, as mentioned by both of our guests as well. And these are times in which every person should stand with the victims of oppression and condemn the oppressors. I'd like to thank both of our guests, Altaf Hussain Wani, senior leader of the All Parties Hurriyat Conference, and G.R. BALUCH, former ambassador. Thank you both for your times and sharing your views. Of course, appreciated very well and very spoken, very articulate as always. Moving on to the second segment about Pakistan and IMF, how they have extended the talks to conclude the standby arrangements review. We know that talks between both the sides are underway at the moment, and they yesterday agreed to extend the talks overnight. And today's development, we know that the US ambassador met the finance minister of Pakistan and assured support for Pakistan's efforts to meet reform targets and improve investment climate in the country. Farrukh, Pitafi, what's your views considering all the dynamics, the US ambassador meeting Pakistan and creating an inclusive environment so that foreign direct investment can come to the country and increasing the investors' confidence both domestically and internationally?
Right, Rafae, thank you very much for the question. I think that the first thing that one has to pull for is the agreement between IMF and Pakistan. I think any time tonight we are going to see some kind of declaration where we will see them coming, in conclusion, coming together on the idea of releasing the last tranche. Excuse me. But regarding the next, extended fund facility, we are still going to wait for the spring session where the government of Pakistan and the finance minister will have to go there and actually actively, pitch the idea for Pakistan's another bailout. Now, this meeting between the US ambassador, usually Pakistan has been very lucky in having ambassadors who are actually very good friends of Pakistan individually as well. The same is the case here as well. Here is a man who has been actually, when it came to his hearing, he actually kept on citing reasons to actually engage Pakistan, and now he has been in Pakistan for quite some time. Last program, when SBA took place, there also he actually played a very crucial role. But there is talk of cooperation between the US and Pakistan. Unlike other countries, what happens with the US is that the investment doesn't come from the government, it comes from the private sector. And then there is another very important aspect, that is reforming the FBR, which we are going to actually pursue with the help of the Gates Foundation. So I think at this moment all these international interactions are very conducive for the economic future of the country. Please go ahead.
Right, thank you Farrukh Pitafi, very articulate with your views, of course, as we know.
Yeah, not that much because I had some kind of thing in my throat.
That's appreciated. But considering the economic prospects, do you think these talks with the IMF, and of course, as if the IMF has hinted that if the Pakistani government requests, they would also push for an extended fund facility. Do you think these steps are in the right direction, considering that we'll also be going for such reforms? And of course, as we know that there's going to be foreign direct investment in the country coming in as well. Do you think the policies that we're going to be focusing on should be more productive and to generate revenue, of course, as well as that?
Right. I think that this is a fair question because it has been repeatedly asked, and in Pakistan, we have the habit of scandalizing any association with the fund. But the truth is, what does the fund actually demand? That you actually curtail the wasteful spending and actually focus or allocate the resources in the right direction.
Right.
So that is essentially the fiscal deficit, current deficit, and all that. Inflows should increase and outflows or expenditures should be curtailed. So I don't think that that is a big problem. I think that in the end you are going to a doctor, and every time I have pain in the chest, I am told to go to the doctor. So going to the doctor and getting a clean bill of health is a good thing. But here's the problem with how things have actually transpired so far between Pakistan and the IMF, that there has been a trust deficit. And because of that, and because we kept on actually abandoning previous programs, or we fell out of them, the problem is that now the fund demands that we actually front load every agreement. That means all the commitments that are to be undertaken, they should be met beforehand, and there should be enough capital shown so that the fund can release its own tranche, and then we can move on to the reforms. Now the problem with that is that in many ways it is a legitimate demand, but then it becomes a problematic thing when you are demanding too much reform in an instant, when the problem is that inflation goes through the roof. Right now the core inflation yesterday we were told has fallen to 18%, which is good news. But then we are hiking the prices of electricity and gas also repeatedly. Yes. Because of that, if it is done too quickly, the fallout can be horrible for the common man on the street. And I think that there should be some kind of cooperation or coordination between the two sides on actually changing the fuel mix of Pakistan. Right. And then this circular debt issue that actually causes the price increases, Rafae, there too I think there will have to be some measure of a credit swap, or perhaps the commitments that were made during the time of floods in Geneva, that can also play some role in curtailing this, instead of actually always hiking the price, because that is going to break the back of the common man on the street.
Right, of course, policies need to be made that do not affect the common man as much and try to provide relief him as well, and there should be policies that also focus on revenue generation at the same time. There's a balance that needs to be maintained, and of course we hope that the government, and we're confident that the government with its policies will succeed in maintaining the balance between two. With that, it's a wrap up for today. I'd like to thank both our analysts, Farrukh Pitafi and Roger Faisal. And of course, with that, we
thank
conclude
yourself
today.
as well.
And Rafae, you have been brilliant.
I appreciate the compliments from both of you.
And by the way, don't tell us that you don't have any option.
I do have an option, but it's great appreciation coming from my two senior peers. With that, it's a wrap up for today. Take care.